Welcome to Frameworks. This is a place for coaches who want more than just reps and sets. We dig into principles, philosophy, and stories that help you coach with clarity, design with purpose, and to keep chasing mastery. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood and misapplied parts of coaching, and that is assessment. Most coaches think assessment is about collecting numbers or showing expertise, but assessment isn't about data alone. It's about seeking the truth. It's how we see where someone truly is, physically, emotionally, behaviorally, so we can meet them right where they are. So in this episode, I'm going to walk through a framework for assessment that goes beyond tests and templates. We'll talk about how to see the whole human, what to measure, and what not to. And we're going to talk about how assessment connects to program design and how we can create a system around assessment. So let's get into it. As I'm sitting here today, we are actually going into week 2 of the OPEX method. So we're taking about 40 coaches through this process of, going through lectures on Tuesdays, applying that in a lab format on Thursdays, and then just opening up, letting our hair down and just having a conversation in office hours on Friday. As I'm sitting here today, we're actually preparing, we just finished week 1 and we're preparing to go into week 2. And week 2 is all about what we're talking about today. It's assessment. So this just kind of, worked out. So my brain is in this assessment mode. And, as I sit down and I think about, what is the best way to lecture against, assessment, not in like the A, B's and C's and the system and how we do it, but more so from like what's the point of taking time to assess and what are we actually looking at when we assess people outside of seeing those objective measures? I think that there's so much beauty and so much that true assessment really uncovers as a coach. And it just gives us some answers to move forward with and to prioritize some things with clients. So this is a really important conversation. And if you don't have a system in which you are assessing, please adopt one ASAP. And if you need help doing that, reach out to us and we'll get you all squared away. But what I want to talk about today is assessment and, how do we look at it? How ought we look at assessment? One way that we shouldn't look at assessment is just judgment, right? So assessment is not judgment, it's awareness. So we get the question all the time, or at least I get the question all the time around like, I'm scared to do like body comp analysis with clients because it could be like a sensitive subject, or, I don't want to show someone exactly where they are because they're not ready to see it or hear it. And it's like, that's exactly what we need to bring to light, but we have to do it in a way that increases awareness, not only our awareness as a coach. And we want that because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, a little nudge or an answer to say like, okay, we should prioritize this versus that because we have that awareness. But we also want to bring awareness to the client. Okay. So a lot of clients don't actually know where they sit because they've never truly been assessed. So when we're thinking about assessment, I want you to just really think about awareness. We're trying to increase awareness, show someone through objectivity exactly where they are. Okay, so it's how we remove assumptions and see clearly or clarify exactly where that person is. And when this is done right, assessment becomes one of the most powerful conversations a coach can have with a client, not because it tells us what's wrong, but because it reveals what's true right now in the moment. It's a starting place, and then we can agree that that is the starting place, and then we can build a big, beautiful plan to move forward. Framework number 1, or the first thing I want you to think about is this concept and, really understand these words. Don't just kind of hear them like, oh, that sounds cool. But it's assess, don't guess. Okay. Yes, it sounds cool because it rhymes, but it's something that we should live by, right? Assessment begins with curiosity, not confidence. So we assess because we don't know the answers. We might have a hunch. And when we assess, that assessment might say that our hunch was true or maybe not, but we don't know for sure unless we assess. And if we're not assessing, we're just guessing, even if it's a very educated guess. So framework number 1 to live by is to assess, don't guess. So every client walks in with stories, history, emotions, and all of those things shape how they live, how they move, how they eat, how they sleep. All of those things are shaped by their own experiences. So it's really important to understand exactly where they're coming from. Our job is to uncover, not assume. So I want you to think about assessment. When we talk about this concept of assessing and not guessing, we want to bring to the forefront 2 specific categories. Category number 1 is we want to find the objective measures. So these are the measurable truths. So these are things that we're all used to doing, right? Like body composition analysis. So we might be looking at what someone's, body fat percentage is, what their body weight is, what their basal metabolic rate is, skeletal muscle mass, all of those things. Also movement screening, right? So it's like there's some objective truths that can come from a movement screen. For example, client A cannot hit below this degree in their squat, or they come to their knees when they try to touch their toes. Whatever that is, those are objective measures. You've seen them and you're noting those things. And then we're also gathering things around like work output. So what is work capacity? Something that we use a lot and we've used for a very long time here at OPEX is a 10-minute assault bike test. Not because it's, a greatly nuanced test, quite the opposite. It's very simple. It's very low barrier. It's very repeatable. So people can just get on there and we can gauge objective truths in work output, i.e. what was the average pace, so RPM over those 10 minutes, i.e. how many calories did they accumulate over those 10 minutes. So those are some objective pieces that we can gather from that. But then we can also gather subjective measures. So these are the felt truths. So things like motivation, resilience, lifestyle rhythm, and how they feel about that, readiness to change, what are their subjective goals and their aims, all of those things. So those are just as important as the objective measures. And a great coach does such a good job balancing these objective and subjective truths that they're uncovering through assessment. So that is framework number 1, assess, do not guess. Framework number 2 is simplicity over sophistication. So more tests don't make you a better coach. You've been this coach. I definitely have been, or maybe you know a coach that's like this, but they have like 15 different gadgets that they use for assessment, and they just get a lot of really good data out of those 15 gadgets in which they're giving their client through assessment. But it's so much data, it's almost like it's overkill, right? It's so overwhelming that they can't focus and narrow down on any priorities because they have so much observable data that they have to discern through. So more tests don't make you a better coach. A better observation does, based on your assessment. So I like to think about assessments and applying this in your coaching system in a way that's repeatable so that you can do it with every client that comes in. Because how do you get good at a specific assessment? You do it a lot of times. Okay. So something that's repeatable and something that is low barrier. Okay. And then finally, something that gives you information that you can use. So in practice, that might look like, and I'm just telling you what our assessment is here at OPEX, body, move, and work. So first, gather body composition data. Okay, so weight, body fat percentage, trends over time. The goal isn't to judge that person or to say like, this is good or bad right now. It's just truth. It's where they are now. And then it gives us something to measure and repeat over time to then see, if what we're doing with that person is working, if the goal is to move any of these body composition measures. Next, we have a movement screen. Okay, so what we do is we do simple pattern-based screens. So that's what I would recommend. Something that's simple, something that's pattern-based, and something that connects to why you're doing it. The entire reason of doing movement screens is to understand what you're going to give someone in program design. So why not allow that screen to actually inform your program design? So when I say pattern-based, think about testing the squat, the lunge, the bend, the push, the pull, and the core, and to actually look at that and understand and look at it while they're doing the test and understand what should my exercise be or not be with this client based on their capabilities and incapabilities. So that should be the entire point of a movement screen. We shouldn't have movement screens that we do and then we go to the drawing board and try to build a program to get better at the movement screen. That doesn't make any sense. So body, move, and then finally work. So I would recommend a single sustainable effort test to understand pacing, resilience, and just mindset. Okay. And then capacity would be the obvious one there. So like I mentioned a minute ago, we do the 10-minute assault bike test. It is very simple. It's sustainable. It's repeatable, and it's very, very low barrier. Okay. So the goal isn't to impress. It's to express clarity through these assessments. So let's spend a second and let's talk about what are some things that make good assessments. Okay, so great assessments are simple, so they're easy to explain, perform, and repeat. A great assessment is repeatable, like we mentioned, so it's consistent across time to measure progress, not only with one client, but to see how your entire client load is progressing through your specific assessments. And finally, it's actionable, right? So it leads directly into design decisions and it informs your program design. Because what are we looking for as coaches? We're looking for priorities and things to inform what we should do and maybe what we shouldn't do with a client. And that's what our assessment should do. It should be extremely actionable. And our last framework is awareness before prescription. Okay. I get it. As coaches, we want to jump right to the answer. We see a problem and we want to solve that. But we need to look at what we're doing in that assessment. We took the time to do the assessment. So let's allow it to build awareness on our side, but maybe even more importantly on our client side. So data means nothing if the client doesn't understand it. So after every assessment, why don't you just connect the dots? Okay, so a couple questions or a couple things that we should consider after every assessment. We should approach our clients and we should say, here's what we saw. Talk about the assessment. Here's what that means. This is why this might be important information based on what we saw. And then finally, here's what we'll do next. So the thing there is that we're now transitioning that information or that data into program design, and we're making it actionable for them. If you've ever had a client that you've had issues with in terms of compliance, this is a great tactic to connect them to their design specifically. That last question, here's what we'll do next. Now it brings intentionality to their program design. So if, on Tuesday they wake up and they look at their CoachRx and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm dreading doing B. They then remember, oh, I'm doing B because we talked about what the data was, what the data meant, and then what we're going to do next. And what we're doing next is very specifically B. So this moment builds buy-in. It turns all of those numbers into a narrative that you can use and your client can truly understand. So just remember, awareness drives change. When clients see the full picture of where they are, they start to take ownership of where they're going. And that should always be the ultimate goal is to allow our clients to take ownership of the training program and of their own results. All right, now applying all three of these frameworks in your coaching practice. Number one, you have to have a systematized assessment. If you don't already have one, please just steal ours. So get a client, go through an intake process, maybe sit down, have a consultation. And then in terms of your physical assessment, go through body. So do some body composition analysis. So if you have an in-body or if you have tape or if you want to use calipers, whatever your system is in terms of body composition analysis, go ahead and use that. And then look at movement. So go through a simple movement screen, do a simple squat movement, lunge movement, bend, push, pull, core movement, and gauge where they're at in terms of capabilities there. And then do a simple work capacity movement or work capacity test. Just take hours, 10 minutes on the assault bike, just go. When you're setting your client up and you're giving them context in terms of how they should approach that, just give them none, essentially. Say, I want you to go 10 minutes and I want you to accumulate as many calories as possible over these 10 minutes. And after that, so number one is just, actually doing an assessment with your clients. Then after that, observe all of the measurements that came out of that. So look at those things, look at the objectives, look at the subjectives, and then bridge the gap. Okay. So when you're done with that assessment and you have context and you have awareness, now pass that awareness down to your client. Okay. And then it doesn't end there. You have to design a training program. You have to, get them to move forward. The whole point of assessing is to show objective and subjective improvement over time. So give them a good training program that's going to move them forward. And then what do you have to do? You have to reassess. So you're not reassessing to only just high five when you see success. You're reassessing because you're keeping yourself honest as a coach. You're looking at what am I doing and is what I'm doing actually moving this client forward. All right, that is all I have to say today about assessment. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, listening. If you're listening, watching, if you're watching this thing on YouTube, thanks so much. Wherever you're at, please just subscribe to this, turn on notifications. So every week that we drop a new episode, you get notified. Like it, comment, all the stuff that people tell you to do. Please do that because I hear it actually helps these episodes reach more people. But I guess I care less about reaching more people. I just care that I reached you because you've made it through this entire episode and I appreciate that. But what I will ask you to do, if you did find this helpful, please share it with at least one other person. So whether that's a coach, whether that's a client, whatever the case is, if you think that anything that I talked about today would be useful, please share it. And hit me up, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Maybe it's around, what we talked about in terms of, these three frameworks around assessment, or maybe you want some advice on what you're doing in your own assessment practice. And if you want to learn this stuff, join us. We're having a lot of fun taking coaches through 10 weeks, very high touch. So we're on 3 times per week over 10 weeks with coaches and lectures and labs and office hours and building coaches' systems, and assessment is part of that process. So if that's something that interests you, reach out and I would love to see you in our next cohort. So that's it for today, guys. I appreciate it and we will see you next time.